Welcome to another edition of some live handicapping as we get you ready for Keeneland. David, I was just counting up, doing a little quick math. I think between Keeneland, Belmont and Aqueduct, Santa Anita, and Woodbine, those four tracks, I think this weekend there are 30 stakes races, Friday through Sunday, over the next few days. So, I mean, this is that really big last weekend, last round of prep races for horses that are trying to win a spot in the Breeders' Cup and sort of see where they stack up with the graded stakes and stakes horses.
Yeah, I believe it. When I was putting together the video schedule this week, I think there were like 20 stakes previews a race of the days. So kept you guys busy with the recording all week, but it feels like it's warranted because there are so many interesting cards this weekend, particularly at Keeneland, where you got the 3 stakes races on Friday, I think 5 graded stakes on Saturday, and a few Breeders' Cup divisions. I think it's still open to which Americans are going to participate in those races, especially some of the turf races and 2-year-old races. And we should get some clarity around that this weekend.
We would love to hear from all of you. So send in your comments, any questions that you have. We're going to pull up the Daily Racing Form past performances and we can bounce around. David, I think if we actually were to spend the time on all those races, we would be here till next Thursday previewing them, especially you and I, the way we get when we start talking about horses, we can very much get excited and go through, big previews for 20, 30 minutes on one race. But let's talk about some Keeneland Friday, some Keeneland Saturday, right? There's some good stakes races on Friday and Saturday we can dive into. And I think that's probably the track a lot of people get excited about. I was talking with Scott Shapiro earlier. For me, why I get so excited about Keeneland too, it's the timing of the year, right? Both of the times when the Keeneland meets start, you're leading right into the biggest parts of the horse racing year. In April, you're getting to see these horses right before the Derby and the Oaks and those big races. And then now we're getting to see these horses hopefully prep for a Breeders' Cup. So the racing and the quality is just incredible at Keeneland.
Yeah, and with a boutique meet like this, I mean, a lot of connections point for Keeneland. So even the undercard races, they have a lot of talent. The maiden races are full of first-time starters with pedigrees, interesting allowance races. So we're going to focus on the stakes action, but there's a lot to dive into in these first few Keeneland cards of the fall meet.
So Keeneland Fridays, if you want to follow along with the past performances, we can pull that up for October the 3rd as we are already into October. And I have a couple comments out there. Mark Mitchell jumping in and Sean O'Neill. Nice to hear from both of you. And feel free, follow along with us with the past performances as we jump into, want to start with race 7, the Phoenix?
Yeah, let's start with the Phoenix. I don't think we have to spend a whole lot of time on this one because it's only a 6-horse field. It sounds like the field should hold together. Some people who would look at Saturday might notice that the number 4 world record, he's cross-entered in the turf sprint on Saturday's card. But Marcus Hirsch, our colleague, did report earlier today that world record is going to run in this race, the Phoenix, which makes sense, Gino. He's 8-5 on the morning line, and he's a horse that when he shows up, these are the kinds of races that he can win. I think it's just a matter of how short a price do you want to take on a horse that has maybe disappointed just a little bit in his last couple of races, mostly last time in the Bing Crosby, where it felt like he was encountering a field of California sprinters that maybe could have been vulnerable to a shipper like him, and he just didn't quite run his race there.
Yeah, I think his last 2 races have been a little strange because the one in the Aristides at Churchill, that was the race. That race was run under some really strange circumstances, some quick fractions. But Durante, who won that race, was like on the lead, dropped back, and then came on again
Yep.
and won. And I remember being really disappointed with World Record at watching the race live that he didn't get the job done. And the fractions might look a little strange, but when you're watching the race, he just felt like he was in the spot to get it done. And he didn't. And then coming back after that, as you pointed out, the Bing Crosby, I mean, he was favored in there on paper. He looked like he was the classiest horse in there. He looked like he had been facing tougher company, and he was just okay. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if he were to show up and win, David. I think of the shorter prices, I probably prefer Nakatomi in this spot. I don't know if I've ever really been the biggest fan of this horse, but he does really like Keeneland. He has run well in this particular race before. And I think with Wesley Ward entering what you're talking about in here, that might be to try to keep the pace honest and not have there be a Skelly get loose or someone else be able to get loose. I think that will help keep this pace honest and set up for Nakatomi a little bit in here. So, sounded like you were maybe a little bit against World Record as well?
Yeah, I mean, just at the price he's going to be, I feel like he's sort of a default option in this race because he's relatively trustworthy. Like I said, this is the kind of race that you expect him to be effective in. I've just been loved. I mean, I will say his race 2 back, he was dueling with Skelly early in the Aristides. So maybe that's just a built-in excuse because a horse that tries to go with Skelly, it's typically a suicidal mission. He actually held on much better than that speed rival to be second in there. But I agree, it was sort of a strange race. And the Bing Crosby, he was just a little dull right from the start. He didn't break that sharply. It was just kind of always out of position. He can win this race. I just didn't find him to be the most exciting option. And the fact that they even thought about cross-entering in the turf race always, to me, is a bit of a negative sign because they're thinking maybe he's not reaching his true potential on the dirt. They'll change something. So I didn't love to see that. I hear the points that you're making with Nakatomi. I mean, he's kept some strong company recently. This is probably class relief for him. I do wonder if he's quite as good this year as he's been in the past. But against this field, he might not have to be. And yeah, I mean, we'll see if Wesley Ward decides to run both of these runners. It seems like Wesley often enters multiples and doesn't run them both, but I don't personally like what you're talking about as a player to win this race, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's a pace factor. But really, Gino, who's forward in this race really all depends on what happens with Skelly at the break because Skelly's got races that could crush this field. It just sometimes feels like it could be all over at the start for him.
Yeah, and a lot of the times, even in graded stakes like this, it just seems like when he's facing a little bit tougher of a group, he just doesn't have that same performance. You can see he's brilliant with his speed figures, and when he gets the right circumstances, he's able to run some of the bigger races possible. But yeah, he's been tough for me to trust. Anytime he's kind of stepped up and faced a little bit tougher, even a group like this, you can see been behind Nakatomi, been behind Durante in World Record previously, even Hear Me Song last time out. So you'll know pretty early on, I think, with Skelly if he can clear the field. And I do think that 6 furlongs is definitely the better distance for him. Once you go farther than that, you don't want to really get beyond that. You don't see him as, much of a 6.5 or 7 furlong type. So yeah, I wish I had something a little more creative here. I think, we all have horses like this, right? It's like everybody's been on the wrong side. That's so fun.
Yep.
Like
I feel the same way. I feel like I've never been on Nakatomi when he's won.
I know, yeah.
But, I mean, having Skelly in the race, he's the kind of horse that I would never bet on because I think he's too untrustworthy and as much natural talent as he has, I'll just let him beat me. But having him in the race, it does bring up the possibility that this could fall apart because he's just going to go too fast. And for me, Gino, that makes the number 6, Hear My Song, just an appealing option that I want to take a shot with in here. I know that winning races at this level, maybe sometimes it's a little bit out of reach for him because he's picked up a few minor awards at stakes levels before. But I mean, he was obviously off form when he returned from a layoff earlier this year, but he is the kind of horse that when he gets good, he tends to hold that form for several races. And it feels like he's really gotten good again over the summer. He actually closed pretty well last time in that stakes race at Churchill Downs behind Ben Tornado, who probably is going to be the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Sprint this year. I don't know how deeply people have looked at that sprint division, but it's pretty depleted at this point. So a horse like Ben Tornado probably will be the favorite in that race out of Del Mar. And Hear My Song, I mean, he was nowhere near him at the finish, but he put in that strong rally, and he's got that versatility where if pace doesn't develop, if Skelly doesn't break, he can be up close to the pace. If pace does develop, he can come from off of it. And I like the outside post because it gives the jockey more options. So I don't know if we'll get 10-1 on him, but he's the horse that I wanted to bet in here.
Yeah, I have no problem with him whatsoever. When you don't love either of the favorites and you can poke holes in them, and then what we did, you kind of go through the rest of the field and it's almost a process of elimination, right? You go through Durante down on the inside, maybe Tyler jumping aboard, thinks that's a jock upgrade. That was a comment here from Javis who, Tyler, I mean, he's in that top tier. Most of the time he is an upgrade when he jumps aboard and he's going to be on what you're talking about. We didn't love Skelly, not the type of horse you necessarily want to bet. And then all of a sudden you get to a horse that looks like they could get a good trip. They could be a nice price. And that is the horse on the outside here in my song.
Yeah, and in response to that question with Durante, I don't even know if it's so much of a jockey thing. I mean, maybe it is a slight jockey upgrade, but still, Durante just feels like a horse that's a little bit random, and David Jacobson runs him so often, like every 3 to 4 weeks. I mean, he can't run at that high level every single time, so he definitely has his ups and downs, and lately it's been a little bit more down. So he's a hard one for me to trust, but at a price, I'm not going to talk anybody off him.
Yep. So just a small field in the Phoenix, but that kicks off the graded stakes action at Keeneland. You want to move on next door to an interesting Jessamine?
Yeah, let's go to the Jessamine. And full disclosure, Gino, this was not a race I did a stakes preview for, and I didn't do that deep of a dive into it. I mean, I'm obviously aware of some of these horses, having watched them through the summer and also some Kentucky Downs. And clearly the one to beat in this race is the number 12, Time to Dream, who has been very impressive in both prior starts at Saratoga. The turn of foot that she's displayed to put those races away in the final quarter mile is something that you don't often see from 2-year-olds. Now, you can debate, the quality of the fields that she was beating, but she has soundly defeated them in those races. And really, for me, Gino, the only major question with her is, how is she going to navigate a trip from this post?
Yeah, that's the real key. Is she going to beat herself, or is the trip going to be a little bit too much for her? Because, David, she's one of the more talented 2-year-olds that we've seen on either surface. Like her turn of foot was absolutely incredible. So I agree with you. And I think what made it a little difficult for me handicapping this race is like the next tier of horses. I wanted to like them more than I actually ended up liking them. Yeah. Horses like Infinite Sky, who I think will kind of be in that next grouping. I just didn't like nearly as much. I wanted to try to make a case for Loveliest. Didn't really like that one quite as much either. So these horses who I think are going to be maybe the next tier of prices down towards the inside, a couple, didn't love either of them. And then you watch what this horse does visually. It was extremely impressive. And I think the outside draw sometimes can actually not really be a big deal if they just decide to drop all the way back. She hasn't been that 10 lengths out of it though, David. So that might be a little bit different from her if they choose those tactics.
Yeah, but also she hasn't gotten that much pace to close into in these races at Saratoga, which is what made that turn of foot so impressive. And it feels like there is just naturally going to be more pace in this race because it's a larger field. And I know when you go through, it doesn't seem like there's a ton of speed in here, but I mean, Lidship kind of has to go from the rail, stretching out. The number 3, Carolyn Caroline, showed a lot of speed when she was sprinting in her, at Kentucky Downs last time. So I think they'll be moving up front, and hopefully they are, because that'll create some gaps for maybe Irad Ortiz to be able to get over. You'll see the stretch run of this race here as she tips to the far outside and just mows this field down very easily and impressively. I will mention one of those speed horses that I was talking about, the number 3, Carolyn Caroline. I'd be a little intrigued by her because she was visually impressive on debut at Ellis Park, albeit in a dirt race. But when you watch that race and look at her pedigree, I mean, you kind of realize that they wanted her on turf that day and for a reason. And she got on it last time. And while she finished 4th in that Untappable, that was a pretty honest pace that set up for the winner, Quiet Street. And she fought on until the very late stages. And that was just her first turf race. It also was Kentucky Downs. And stretching out over a course like this, I won't be surprised when she's able to run better.
There was one price horse that I thought was interesting that I might try to get involved with Time to Dream, David, and that's Red Beretta. So this horse on paper, you kind of probably look and then take another glance and maybe look away. Looks a little like kind of cheaper on paper. The turf form is actually very good for this horse overall, in particular the last 2 grass races. That race at Kentucky Downs last time out I thought was very good. This horse was towards the back of the pack early on, was like last of 10, about 8 lengths off, and made this big, wide move and just sustained this 4 wide bid. So she's the number 5 in here that we're watching. And I kept expecting her to stop after she made this move. And she digs in, she fights all the way, and late in this race, she is still battling. And I do think that she will be kind of dismissed in this race because people will look for other horses on paper that look like they're maybe a little more exciting. Maybe they have more upside, a little bit higher speed figures. She's in between horses here, and she's still trying after making that big move. I was just impressed watching this horse. Was one of the few horses in here that like the light bulb went off for me and was like, wow, I don't know if this is the right spot but in this big race, not a lot of these horses jumped out to me. And I think this one at value, I want to try to hook up a little bit with Time to Dream.
Yeah, I had trouble getting a gauge on what the quality of that juvenile fillies at Kentucky Downs really was, because as you saw in that replay, it was a blanket finish where a bunch of horses hit the wire together. And I always question the quality of those races a little bit. And then you compound that with the fact that it was at Kentucky Downs and it's kind of an improved number for a few of these horses. So I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. But Gino, I think she's going to be every bit of 20-1 once again. I mean, she was a huge price last time. So, I mean, you'll get paid if you're right with her, especially because I would imagine Time to Dream is going to be pretty short in this race, despite the post position. Horses that have looked as good as her in their victories, they tend to take a lot of money.
Yeah, your point is spot on there too. I think because we don't like that Kentucky Downs form can be a little tricky sometimes because there's that blanket finish. Not sure how good she is. I know that she won't be a short price. And those factors I don't mind quite as much when the horses are going to be huge prices, right? I think those are great things to poke holes in with the horses with. Like, yeah, I don't know how good that race was, but for her, I think finishing in the mix with a lot of those, just getting the right kind of trip. If she just is totally forgotten about in here, she's the type of horse who might be 40-1, right? I mean, you could see it if like everybody else gets bet in this race and she just floats up. So, you know, if you are playing this race where you love Time to Dream and you're looking for some other horses underneath, I think she is right there and able to be competitive with a lot of the other fillies in this field. So keep an eye on her. Jabus also said, yeah, respect the pick was tough to make up ground. Some days it is very tough to close ground over there at Kentucky, David.
Yeah, I mean, the other horse that was making a big late run that you saw in that replay was the number 5 Rose Room, who seemed like she hit her best stride just as they were crossing the finish line. She does feel like the kind of horse that takes a long time to wind up. And when you look at her pedigree, she is the half-sister to a horse named Pixelate, who I loved to pick back in the day when he was running, you know, around 19, 20. And I mean, he was a horse that often would give himself a little bit too much to do, didn't always visit the winner's circle, but definitely a horse that had a lot of talent routing on the turf. So I wouldn't be surprised if Rose Room was another that could move forward a little bit from that race.
Shall we move to the grade one, Alcibiades?
Proceed on to the Alcibiades, because I don't think we're going to have to spend that much time on this race.
No, and it does look like both of the grade ones for 2-year-olds this weekend. Short prices. You have an overwhelming Spendthrift Farm 2-year-old as a standout in both of the races. This one, it's Tommy Joe, who was very impressive. And honestly, David, when you look at like the running styles for both of their horses and the way they've won races, it's kind of similar. Just impressive, able to sit just off. Just look like they're a little more ahead of the game than the rest of the horses they're facing.
Totally. I mean, between Ted Noffey and Tommy Joe, they have very similar running lines. Tommy Joe was a horse that really turned heads on debut. I think even more so than Ted Noffey did when he won his race, because he kind of did it in workmanlike fashion. Tommy Joe, I mean, it was a dazzling performance on debut. And here's the stretch run of her spin away where she's easily putting away Percy's Bar. The one thing I would say about Tommy Joe, especially in the spin away, Gino, is I don't think that was the strongest edition of the spinaway, to say the least. I mean, Percy's Bar, she is what she is. She was an early 2-year-old that ran well a couple times in Kentucky, but didn't feel like she really moved forward when she faced off against Tommy Joe. And once you got past those top two, there just was not a whole lot of running going on through the stretch of that race. I mean, the 4th place finisher looked like he was getting eased at the top of the stretch and still managed to beat a couple of rivals home there. So Tommy Joe is, she's a horse that I think still has some things to prove. I'm just not sure that she's going to need to prove them to win this race. And she's the kind of horse that if you want to be against her come Breeders' Cup time, you would be happy to just see her win this race easily and maybe poke some holes in her when she has to go out to California and face a tougher field. But going through this Alcibiades, Gino, I just could not warm up to anybody else as the alternative.
That's the really, really difficult part, because I agree with you. These are the types of horses who you want to play against as a gambler. You look at them, they got nice, easy victories. They got good speed figures that are maybe a little bit higher than everybody else. But who is the next horse that you go to? The only horse in this race, honestly, that I thought was a little bit interesting and maybe has some upside, and that's a horse that actually came in with a pretty low buyer speed figure for the maiden win, was the Grumpy Rabbit. I thought there might be just, this one could be a wild card because tried turf in the debut, going a mile at Saratoga. That's a good effort for a horse in the career debut. Then in career start number 2, August the 24th at Ellis Park, showed a lot more speed that day, was forward, was just sitting close, moved right up to the lead going into the turn, and then drew off. It was a really easy win. I don't know who this horse beat. He didn't have to really overcome. She didn't have to overcome a whole lot in there, but she does seem like a horse that I haven't seen beaten a few times, and that there might be a ceiling where she can take a step forward, David. So I thought the Grumpy Rabbit was kind of the only horse in here to me that was a little bit intriguing to put along with Tommy Joe.
Yeah, when I was handicapping this race, she's the one that I put second as well. It's a distant second because I agree with everything you said. She looked good last time. That was another pretty weak race at Ellis. So she's got a lot of things to prove from a quality standpoint. But, I mean, maybe Tommy Joe doesn't get the distance. And then the race becomes open to really everybody else. Because, I mean, we can point out, Gino, you look at the dam of Tommy Joe, appropriately named Mother. I mean, she was a horse that was in the Bob Baffert stable that, I mean, they tried to go long a few times. She almost got a grade 1 in the Starlet as a 2-year-old, got run down at the very end. But she was mostly a 6 to 7 furlong specialist. So I do think there have to be some questions about how far Tommy Joe really wants to go. It's just those are questions that might be answered down the line.
Yeah, because many times, horses can regress and still win. Right. Yep, if she does regress, if you're just looking at speed figures too, if she doesn't run as high of those speed figures and she comes back a little bit, we only have, I think, one horse in here who got into 70, and that was the horse who was running behind her. So there does just seem to be a little bit of a gap between how fast she was running and how fast a lot of these horses have been running so far.
Totally, which just makes her really tough to beat in this race. And maybe it's one you just want to watch and assess what to do with her come the time for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies.
Cool. David, you want to flip on over to Saturday now? We have a lot of ground to cover there.
Over to Saturday. And while we're talking about the 2-year-olds, I'll say if anybody wants to leave a comment, if you need opinions on Aqueduct, because they've got the Frisette and the Champagne there, or the races out west at Santa Anita, Gino and I have looked at those too. So we're happy to comment on those, but we're going to try to keep the train rolling here at Keeneland and move on to Saturday because there is a lot to talk about on this Saturday card with the 5 graded stakes races. And we'll start with race 6, which is the grade 2 Woodford. This one going the 5.5 furlong distance on the turf. And, going through this race, it doesn't feel like it came up as strong a field as we're used to getting in this race, because this usually feels like it's one of the key preps for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. And I'm just not sure it came up that way this year.
I completely agree. And I think because of that, I gave a big price a shot, because I just didn't think there was anyone here that scared the heck out of me all that much. So, I mean, I thought even David to the outside, a horse that was a little bit interesting was Script, trying to figure out what to do with this horse. This is a horse who is 6 years old now and coming off of a decent effort. We're winning at Kentucky. Again, that Kentucky form is tricky. And I actually had somebody had a question about that, David. Do you do anything when you have horses coming out of like a meet like that or a particular turf course? Is there a blanket way you look at them, or do you kind of just take them case by case?
I generally try to take the races case by case. I mean, watching replays at Kentucky Downs is an exercise in and of itself because it's not a conventional racetrack, and some horses. What I would say about watching replays at Kentucky Downs is focus on the horse that you're handicapping and just see if it looks like they're handling the course early on, because usually you can tell if a horse is getting over that course and handling the undulations or not. And some horses just don't really seem to get over that Kentucky Downs turf course the same way that they would a place like Keeneland. So I would note that early in the trips when I'm watching them from Kentucky Downs. But generally, I mean, I'm not sure what to do with the form. You do see some horses that have only run big races on turf at Kentucky Downs, can't do it other places. That's a bit of a red flag for me. But generally, it's a track where you do see trips, because I think some of the jockeys don't quite know how to ride that course sometimes. So you can find some nuggets watching those races, but I wouldn't make a blanket statement just to say, well, I'm dismissing all the form from Kentucky Downs, or I've heard some people say I upgrade the form from Kentucky Downs because running up and downhill makes the horses fitter for the next start. I haven't necessarily seen the evidence for that, but that's a school of thought as well. I do kind of take it on a case-by-case basis.
Good question there. And we're seeing a lot of nice interaction from some of the folks out there. The notorious OTB, Chase Sessoms. They have a good podcast. I've jumped on there with them before. Talks about loving Keeneland. But, I mean, he's the wolf of Oaklawn, David. So he can't be cheating on Oaklawn with Keeneland.
Disregard his opinion
right?
Here.
I was going to say, when we get to Oaklawn, Wolf, you're going to be up on here with us, no doubt about it. This was asking about a particular race at Santa Anita tomorrow. It's not one of the stakes races tomorrow. I have looked at it, and if David was saying, if we want to just share opinion, I was waiting for the number 5 Suchet to run back. This is a horse who was in the Del Mar Mile last time out. He had a very impressive debut. He's the number 5 at Del Mar or at Santa Anita in race 4 tomorrow on Saturday. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Saturday, race 4, Santa Anita. That's the number 5. Suchet had legitimate talent in his first start in the U.S. Then they tried the Del Mar Mile. I think that was just a little too tough of a group. Keep an eye on that one back if you're looking for a horse to throw in over at Santa Anita in race number 4. So that was from Dakota.
Great stuff, Gino. You've done more work than I have on these races for the weekend.
I was going to say this weekend, Woodbine, Santa Anita, Aqueduct for sure, and definitely Keeneland. So yeah, I took a nap earlier today in the middle of the day, which I don't normally do. So yeah, I'm good. I'm good now.
We could flip back on over to the Woodford at Keeneland, and it's a wide open race, Gino. And I hear you with the number 9 script. I mean, he does feel like an up and coming horse. When I was handicapping him, I kind of had to remind myself that he's a 6-year-old, because against this field, he kind of feels like one of the youngsters, because you've got a couple of 9-year-olds in here. Arrest Me Red's almost 7, but it feels like he's 14 at this point. So, I mean, Script does feel like a relatively new face in here. I wonder how much he can improve on the last race. I do think he's going to have to run a little better here, and 5.5 furlongs could be just a touch sharp for him. But he is an intriguing new face in here, because those that we're kind of familiar with, I don't know how much I really trust them. I mean, the number 7, Governor Sam, is a horse that I think could take some money coming in for George Weaver with Irad Ortiz, a horse that was very popular this summer at Saratoga, but those were restricted 3-year-old races. And I mean, he ran in that grade 1 at Kentucky Downs last time. And I don't know, Gino, he was behind horses. I saw what Irad was doing, trying to save some ground and come up the inside. Maybe this horse didn't love rallying inside of horses, but I generally don't love the way they've taken this horse's speed away from him in recent starts. And I just wonder if that's going to work negatively against him as they turn back to 5.5 furlongs here.
I completely agree. I do the 5.5, I think, is better than the 6.5 overall. But your point, the way that they've been setting him up, it's like they've been trying to save some for late in the races with him instead of using the speed. I always prefer the opposite approach. Use your weapon, try to run horses off their feet and, get a little separation instead of saving. So, and I do think he gets bet a little bit, especially with Irad aboard. I don't think he's going to be 6-1 or so. I wouldn't be shocked if he's 7-2.
Yeah, and we should mention that the number 2 world record, as we said before, he's coming out of this race. I don't know what price he would have been. I personally wouldn't have liked him at all on the turf, but he will not be running, which does take a little bit of speed out of this race, Gino. And I think it does make the number 3, Joe Shiesty, a little scary from the front end. I know he's going to have to deal with Doncho, who's another fast horse, but with Joe Shiesty being drawn inside of him, he's got one way to go. I mean, we know at this point he's a horse that needs to be in front, really just by himself to have his best chance. He doesn't want to be dueling with another horse, and he's fast enough to get there. He just lost all chance of the start last time because he stumbled, he was off slowly, and when he's in that position early, he's never going to do anything. But he ran well 2 starts back at the end of last year. I know he's had a relatively light 2025 campaign, but I would not be surprised when he's able to take them a long way up front. It's just a matter of whether or not he can get the 5.5 furlongs if Doncho really goes after him early.
And I completely echo everything you said. That's what makes it a little difficult for me to get to Kadem, who I think is the class of the field. If this race was going 6 furlongs, or if we knew and felt comfortable about the amount of early speed there would be in here, I think this horse could get up and would have no problem. Because if you look back through the past performances, this horse does have wins, can get up at 5 furlongs even under the right circumstances if they're going fast enough. But I don't know if this is going to be the type of race, David, where they're going fast enough. Kadem finishes 3rd in the race that we're watching right behind Howard Wolowitz.
Yeah, and I thought Kadem got a decent trip in this race. He was a little keen in the early stages, and Frankie Dettori was trying to find a spot for him in the middle of the stretch. He had to kind of, knife this horse into some tight quarters to get there. But this horse, to his credit, he went there and he got into the clear. And I didn't love the way that he sort of flattened out at the very end because
Agreed.
it felt like he had his chance to get there at the final furlong and he couldn't really push past the leaders and actually was getting run down by Arrest Me Red in the final stages of that race. And, while we're talking about that turf sprint from Kentucky Downs, I will say Arrest Me Red ran deceptively well in there because he did not get away cleanly. He was towards the back. Really, he just farther back than he wants to be. And that was a race that just didn't feature any pace at all. I mean, I'll pull up the Timeform USPPs, which color codes these paces, red for fast or blue for slow. I mean, you could see these fractions are all color coded blue for that turf sprint, really as slow a pace as you're going to see in an elite turf sprint at that level. And Arrest Me Red, I mean, he was angled wide and he kept making up ground despite the fact that that race was not coming back to him. So, I mean, Arrest Me Red is a horse that just always shows up. I mean, you're going to get a good effort from him. It's whether or not he's good enough to win at this level at the age that he is now. But I don't think this race came up as tough as it could have, Gino. And I believe a horse like Arrest Me Red could be really dangerous in here if he's able to get better forward position than last time.
When I started the race, because when I handicap the races, I just go inside to outside. I'll start with the replays. I'll go to the charts. I'll just try to get as much information about each of the horses as I move through. And initially, I'm thinking that I wasn't going to like him. Same. And he was the type of horse who I was like, I'm usually playing against him. But what you pointed out, he's not normally that far back as he was in that Kentucky Downs race. And I don't know if Kadem can sit closer. I do know Arrest Me Red can be in a much more mid-pack, like tracking type of spot. So if this horse doesn't get shuffled back from the rail and he can sit like 4th or 5th, just a couple lengths off, he absolutely could be in a really great spot. He's classy enough to win a race like this. Generally, I would look around for horses, and a lot of times he would be one of the shorter prices that I was trying to beat. But now he's actually very playable in here, and I warmed up to him a lot more as I got deeper into this race.
Yeah, I mean, I went through the same process with him. You start looking at this race and you think, well, Arrest Me Red is a horse I've seen run in races like this a bajillion times. He's probably not going to win. He might finish 3rd. But as you go through, I mean, and you start to watch some of the replays, he does make more sense. And he's, as you were saying, he's got more speed than he showed in the last couple of races because you watch the early portions, especially of the race 2 back at Churchill, where they just showed no intention to use any of his speed. Corey Lannery took a hold of him as soon as he took one step out of the starting gate. And I mean, I know Luan Machado is not the most aggressive rider himself, but from the inside, you've got to use him just a little bit not to get shuffled back. And I think if he can maintain position in mid-pack, he's got a strong finish on him. We saw it 2 back. We saw it last time. And I think he's in deceptively strong form right now as a 7-year-old. So if I had to make a pick in this race or highlight a horse I wanted to bet, it would be him. Kind of using him with Joe Shiesty, who I mentioned, who I do think is a threat to go gate to wire. I definitely like him more than Doncho of the 2 speeds. And for me, the other horse is Kadem, Gino, but I think Arrest Me Red is a little more interesting than that other one coming out of the same race.
And I think Kadem will get bet more. I feel like that because
I think he's supposed to.
People look at this race and you look at a horse like Kadem and he's just more interesting looking on paper for a lot of the reasons that we said. You haven't seen him in the US get beat over and over again. You haven't seen, he's sort of that newer wild card. And as we get, through this race, it might be the one horse that offers us some nice value, Arrest Me Red, if it's in that, 6 to 1-ish range.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, with the scratch, I don't know if he's going to be quite that high, but because I'm honestly not sure who's going to be the favorite in this race.
Neither.
It's a tough one. I think Nick made Don Show the morning line favorite, which I get. You might view him as the now horse. I think Joe Shiesty in the race makes it a little tough to have a lot of confidence in Don Show. And I didn't love the way he was kind of coming back to Allegan at the end last time. But I mean, we should point out Allegan came right back to win a stakes race at Aqueduct last weekend with the same buyer. So, I mean, it does validate the form a little bit. I just wasn't really that into him. And Arrest Me Red, I wouldn't be shocked if he were 7-2, and I wouldn't be shocked if he were 6-1. And really, any price in that range is okay for me.
David, this horse a little bit. He's been in New York for a while. Outlaw Kid, who we just saw run 3rd. Any thoughts on him? He's a horse that our friend Mike Beer has really liked for a long time. And I could never quite figure out what he liked so much about this horse because I never feel like I was totally bought into him. He's got that one big race, the 100 buyer from 2023. But since then, I feel like he's been a little bit disappointing. Even when he's gotten the job done, I haven't necessarily been thrilled with his performances. And recently, I just don't think that he's even gotten back to his better races now. He was a 6-year-old. So he wasn't for me, but George Weaver, he typically is dangerous in these turf sprints. As Sean was mentioning, some of the post position information. So yeah, something to keep in mind too when you're looking at turf sprints. The outside posts weren't quite as good. A lot better down on the inside. So Sean, thanks for sharing those numbers with us, and good luck when you're doing your handicapping this weekend.
Yeah, you got those tight turns on the turf at Keeneland, so you definitely don't want to be hung 3 to 4 wide when you're going into them. And it can be hard to predict who's going to get to those spots, but it's something to keep in mind when you're watching the trips from there.
Should we move to the TCA, David? Race number 7?
Yep.
And we actually had a question about a horse in this one that I was saving. Eric, shout out to Eric. He does some help. He helps us out with some of the DRF Bet on Sports now. He'll give us some sports plays, and he's really sharp when it comes to betting on sports. And he knows what he's talking about when playing the races as well. There's not that much early speed on paper in here. And I mean, depending on some of these horses that want to track off a little bit, Long Neck Paula is probably the quickest on paper in here. I don't know if I've ever thought that she was that great, David. Like, I played against her a few times, but she does look to be in a really nice spot. We can see the Timeform US Pace Projector has it color coded with those icicles, right, favoring front runners.
Yeah, and she is supposed to be the one that's clearly in front early. I guess the problem making a strong case for Long Neck Paula, Gino, is the last race. And I'll kind of pull up the middle portion of it if I can fast forward to that point, because I mean, you can kind of see here, she is leading and she's doing it very easily. Dylan Davis, who was on her this day, takes a hold of her. I mean, she's all alone up front. That's the
trick she wants.
Yeah, it should be a very comfortable pace for her. And, he starts to ask her to pull away a little bit at the top of the stretch here, but she can't get away from the field. And the horse ranging up on the outside, Praying. I mean, just look at the turn of foot that Praying puts in compared to Long Neck Paula, as she just easily puts her away and runs away from this field. And I know Praying was 21-1 this day and Long Neck Paula was 2-1, but I mean, I can't watch this race back and not want Praying instead of Long Neck Paula out of it.
It wasn't like there were 4 horses lining up on the lead against Long Neck Paula and it set up perfectly for Praying, right? And Praying just fell into it. It wasn't like that at all. Praying sat pretty close, moved right into a horse who wasn't really getting pushed on the lead either. I completely agree with you. I on paper, when I was just doing the first glance, going, oh, wow, there really isn't that much early speed. Then watching that race, I don't know how I could come out of that race saying I prefer Long Neck Paula over Praying. I just couldn't. Even if Long Neck Paula gets a much easier trip on the front in here, I don't think Praying has to be too far back. That was just a disappointing race to watch back. Even at the top of the lane, when she's out in front, you just expect her to battle a little bit more and to probably finish second there. And she doesn't even do that.
No, she just gave it up. And that she's been a horse that I found is a little faint-hearted in her races. Like, she even had a chance to win that race too back and just got outgamed at the very end of it. So Long Neck Paula, she's just not for me. I've not been a big fan of hers. And I mean, I to be honest, Gino, I don't think that there's going to be this price difference between Praying and Long Neck Paula. I just can't imagine so many handicappers viewing the race that way, wanting Long Neck Paula out of it. So I'd imagine those two are going to be similar prices, and maybe Praying is closer to 6 to 8-1 and Long Neck Paula is the same. So maybe she's more appealing at that price. But I don't know. I mean, one thing I'll say about Praying, Gino, is that I think I did the stakes preview of the Prioress with Mike Beer, and I'll keep touting Mike Beer's good opinions as we go through this. But he liked this horse. I think he picked her second at 21-1, and I kind of first looked and thought he was insane, but then he was making a case about how she showed talent as a 2-year-old. She ran really well behind Echo Sound, who looked really good at that time. And then, the couple of trips didn't go right for her earlier this year. And I mean, if you just kind of erase those races at Oaklawn and Churchill Downs, it seems perfectly logical that she would have improved around a 90 buyer based on what she was doing in October and November of her 2-year-old season. So maybe she is a horse that just needed, a couple stops and starts to figure things out. And now she's turned into the horse that she was always meant to be. So I think Praying is very dangerous in this race, if you can't tell. I mean, there's not a ton of speed, and she's supposed to be perched outside of Long Neck Paula once again. So again, I think she could be, 6 to 8-1 in this race, but I believe that would be a fair price on her.
Yeah, because when we start with handicapping this race, you're going to be looking at Vava, who's going to be a very heavy favorite in here. And I respect the heck out of Vava. Last year, right around a year ago, she was in her career best form. She was the best filly and mare sprinter in the division at that time. She's now just won for her last 5, right? And she's taking money in a lot of these races, right? She's been the beaten favorite twice. She won it 5-2. The other 2 times she's 5-1 and under, even against the best filly and mare sprinters. So I respect her. If she woke back up here and was just too classy for this group, would not shock me at all. But I think with her recent form and the price she's supposed to be, I think we're supposed to try to play against a horse like this right now.
Yeah, not to give too much credence to trainer speak, but I mean, Cherie DeVoe has said a couple times she didn't ship her to Saratoga because she believes that she doesn't like the track at Saratoga. And as you start to go through Vava's form, it becomes apparent. I mean, it's been a little while since she's run a particularly good race outside of Churchill, where she's based in Kentucky. We'll see. I mean, she hasn't raced at Keeneland in a while. I really didn't like her last race at Charlestown. And I'll just show the middle portion of the race because whatever, she lost to Mystic Lake, who was loose on the lead, but that was a slow pace. And you can see the middle portion of the race when they start to go into the far turn, Vava's disengaging from the race, and she's barely able to even stay up in that pocket behind a leader who's going pretty slowly up front. I mean, you're going to see as they move into the far turn. I mean, she drops a good 4 to 5 lengths behind Mystic Lake when she should have been able to stay up in that spot, given how slowly they were going. Maybe Charlestown is just added to the list of tracks she doesn't like, but I mean, didn't she win a graded stakes over there as a 3-year-old? So I don't know. I just feel like the excuses are just piling up for Vava at this point, and I don't want her in this race.
Yeah. And Sean says 6 panels, maybe not her distance either. Maybe she's a little better going 7-ish, if this is a little too quick for her. I just think she's a good horse in here to probably play against if you like someone else. You keep talking about Praying as being a very logical horse. What kind of price would you be hoping for with Praying?
Yeah, I mean, I would say 7-1 would be ideal, and I think attainable. I don't know how low she's going to go because I think horses like Vava will take money. I think Zeitlos is going to take money. I could even see her getting bet down a little bit in this race. And Zeitlos I like more than I do Vava. I mean, Zeitlos obviously can be pace compromised at times, but she is a 6 furlong specialist. She loves this Keeneland course. I like the turf to dirt move with her. She's a fine turf horse, but these kinds of races on the dirt, I think, are just generally more winnable spots for her because the competition tends to be a little bit thinner. So I think Zeitlos makes a certain amount of sense here. And the one other horse I'll throw out, Gino, is the number 3, Helena's Forte, who I know she looks like a 1-number horse based on her 4-year-old campaign where she's got that upset victory, the honorable miss, and then a couple of less than appealing efforts surrounding it. But I thought she ran better than it looks in her seasonal debut at Prairie Meadows, where she had to make an early move into a fast pace, and you kind of tell just needed the race for fitness. And then last time in the Ballerina, the start was far from ideal. I mean, she got bumped between horses. She was off a little slowly. She got shuffled back after the start. So she wound up further back than she really wants to be, facing off against a field that just plain and simple is probably better than the one that she's meeting here. So I think you can make some excuses. And if Helena's Forte is able to get back to that honorable miss performance, I think she fits very well with this field.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I had her pick 3rd in here. So I completely agree. I think she has the ability to put herself in the race and finish, which are 2 things I think could be important in here. She doesn't have to get outrun early, but she's not like a need the lead type horse. That kind of leads me to the other horse I'm intrigued by, David. I'm the 4, who's one of a horse I saw here in California a lot, Vodka with the Twist, that Eric was asking just solely on the cutback. With her, Eric was thinking about maybe singling her. That would be a really good place to get some separation, Eric, if you did so. I like the cutback to 6 furlongs for her, just giving her more punch now. I really just have never known how good she is. She's honest. She will fight you. She's got some speed. I don't know if she's going to sit off and be able to pass and beat older fillies and mares here, but I do like 6 furlongs. I do like the trip for her. Any thoughts for you on Vodka with the Twist here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, at first I thought that Leslie's Lady buyer speed figure came out of nowhere because it didn't make a whole lot of sense for her. Yeah. It didn't make a whole lot of sense for the winner Kilwin, but then Kilwin came back and repeated it, winning the test.
Yep.
And Vodka with the Twist now come back and validated it with a decent second in the Charlestown Oaks. So maybe she is just that fast now, and 3-year-olds can improve a lot, from the spring to the summer to the fall. 6 furlongs to me, it's a little sharp for her. But she sprinted as a 2-year-old. I mean, I couldn't quite get to her in this race because there were others that I liked more, but she's one that I wasn't totally against. I was sort of on the fence about her.
I think I just would want a little more than what she is on the morning line. I think I feel 6-1, 8 in that 6 to 8-ish range. Then I would really warm up to her. I just don't know if she's going to be that because we're saying once you get beyond Vava, I wonder how the money gets bet and spread around a little bit, because I think she will definitely be that overwhelming favorite. And then I feel like there could be a really like even tier of horses, a lot of like similar odds with horses like Long Neck Paula, Praying getting bet down a little bit, Vodka with a twist, Zetlos, even Helena Sportique, kind of all in that next tier between maybe like 4 and double digits, something in that range.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Gino. I don't know how short a price Vava is going to be. I mean, if I were making a line for this race, I don't even know if I would have had her as short as 7-5, because I just feel like she has to have burned a lot of support at this point in time, because she's disappointed so much. Maybe this is the right kind of level for her. But yeah, I'm not sure what kind of price a horse like Vodka with a twist is going to be. Maybe right around 4-1. But I mean, if you want to poke holes in the favorites, she's a viable option.
Yeah, Barry, the sniper says Vava was asleep that night. Absolutely. Yeah. Barry teams up with Chase Sessoms, the Wolf of Oaklawn, with the notorious OTB. Barry's been helping us out for the last couple of years with some of our DRF promotional stuff, and anytime we've got sales and stuff. So shout out to Barry out there on social media. And Vava is going to sail in November, so this will be the last race for Cherie, seeing if they can get a win at Keeneland here, going out for Cherie DeVoe. Anything else you want to hit on in the TCA?
No, we should probably move on to this first lady, because I think we could spend an hour just on this race, Gino. This one is like, it's a war where you could make cases for just about everybody, and even beyond those in the main body of the field. There are some interesting AEs, so there's a lot to go over in this one.
Yeah, so what is kind of tricky to start with is one of the more likely winners of this race is probably on the also eligibles list. Special One, right? Drawn to the outside. Like if she were to get in this race, she would probably be, whether or not you like her, she would be like a top tier kind of contender. So she's one that's on the outside looking in, hoping to get a little bit of luck. But I would say, you know, when you're kind of starting with this field, that dynamic pricing is a horse who is in very nice form, is a grade 1 winner. I was a little bit curious about the placing of her last race though. Right. And maybe you don't have to overthink it. And maybe it's just like Chad Brown has so many horses that some of them are going to have to go in softer spots than the grade 1s, and they can't all just face each other. But coming off of the grade 1 Just a Game win, and then the third in the Diana, I did think it was a little strange to see her drop down to the Perfect Sting, a lot lower level stakes race.
I'll jump in. It was a scheduling thing. And I think it was a little bit of Chad Brown trying to send a message to the stakes coordinator at NYRA.
He made some comments throughout the year about the changing of the races.
I mean, contrary to popular belief, Chad Brown isn't actually the stakes coordinator at NYRA. And sometimes he gets a little upset about decisions that are made, because he wanted to run in the Ballston Spa at its traditional date, which is a grade 2. That's on Travers Day. But they moved the Ballston Spa, I think it was, to Whitney Day this year. And I guess he felt that coming back in 3 weeks was a little too quickly from the Diana. So that's why dynamic pricing didn't run there. And I think they just viewed the Perfect Sting as the right race in terms of timing to use as a stepping stone to this one, which is the obvious fall goal, the next grade 1 race for the fillies and mares going a mile. So yeah, she's very logical. I mean, I'll pull up the replay of her last race, Gino. And I mean, I think a lot can be made of the traffic that she encountered in the stretch. Because, I mean, there are some anxious moments here for Dylan Davis as he's in the Klarovich Silks, the number 5 horse. You'll see, I mean, he's behind a wall of horses. He initially wants to go to the outside, can't really find room there. He has to dive back into the inside, which can be a risky move, because sometimes you go back to the inside and there's no room there. And there really wasn't a whole lot of room there. But, I mean, credit to this filly. She just kind of bowls her way through and is able to find the gap inside of Rakia there. And as soon as she finds daylight, she shoots on through to win this race. So you really have to respect the turn of foot that she possesses to sort of get herself and also get Dylan out of trouble, because I think Dylan was breathing a sigh of relief after that race that he was able to keep the mount on her. Look, she's really good, and I think she's found herself as a miler this year. In a field that's this competitive, though, and this large, she's kind of obvious. She's pretty exposed at this point. I don't know how short a price I want to take on her, and I do think she's going to be a clear-cut favorite in here. So she's in the mix for me, but I think there are some other prices that I could warm up to.
Completely agree. She's the horse you kind of start with, the talking point. I think she's going to run her race. Now, which of these other horses could be better prices, could jump up and help us out? Just out of curiosity, what price do you think the 3 is going to be? Nanda Dea. Because that's a horse that has been visually impressive, but not on speed figures.
She is the wise guy horse of this race in the sense that, like, especially now that she's the 15-1 morning line, and I know Nick Tamra would agree with me about this. Like when you set a horse just like a tick too high, and sometimes it looks like a really appealing option to a lot of people, there's like this snowball effect where maybe a horse that would have been 8-1, if you set it at 10-1, when you make it 15-1, suddenly it becomes a 6-1 shot.
The overreaction, right? Yeah,
the overreaction. And I could see Nan Dea being 6-1 in this race because she feels like a very appealing option. She's been so visually impressive. I think some people might perceive her as having had trouble last time. The short comment, blocked, tip out. When I watched that race, I thought it was a perfect trip overall. I mean, she saved ground. She rode the pocket. Yeah, there was a brief moment in mid-stretch where Jose Ortiz had to pause for like a split second, but she got out and ran past those horses. But I mean, it couldn't have been the plan at that time to lay her up for 7 months and then come back in a grade 1. So obviously she had a setback. I don't know how short a price I'd want to take on her given the layoff coming in. I think she could be talented. I mean, she's not for me because I think she's got a little too much steam behind her.
Yeah.
But I understand why people might land in her direction.
Yeah, I just in seeing some other people talk about this race and handicap this race, and no, just what you were pointing out, right? She looks interesting at 15-1 on paper. So all of a sudden she opens up at like 5-1 or 4-1 or something like that. And then you're going, okay, that's way too short. Horse that I liked David earlier on in her career a little bit, and then I kind of got off her a little recently, and I do think it's an interesting spot for her is the other Chad Brown runner, Suggesta, who's drawn towards the outside. Now, this horse from New York, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on Suggesta, who was horse who wanted to be like pretty close to the lead in a couple races. I did think she had legitimate trouble last time out. She just missed at Kentucky Downs in that race. Suggesta towards the outside, the number 9. What are your thoughts on her with Pratt and Brown?
Yeah, I mean, I'll pull up the replay of the Kentucky Downs race because we've got, I think, 3 coming out of here. Well, actually, I'll show the start first because Pinup Betty breaks slowly. It's a little hard to see because I'm not sure what they're doing with these starts at Kentucky Downs. I like the drone shot, but we are pretty zoomed out here. Pinup Betty breaks slowly. I guess there was very little to see there from that angle. But look, Suggesta, she had a little bit of trouble in mid-stretch, but I thought all in all, it kind of worked out for him this race. She got through along the inside. And to me, Gino, she's hanging a bit in the late stages because she gets there. She's that horse that's in second right now between horses. And I wanted to see her go by. She does at the very end, but only after Special Juan ranges up alongside her. At the end of the day, I know this race got a big buyer. I just didn't love this race overall. And I'm kind of disappointed Special Juan's not in here because she would have taken more money if she had been drawn to the main body of the field, and I would have been against her because I don't really like her that much. And I kind of feel similarly about Suggesta for the connection she goes out for. I feel like she's always, she could, I want to say she's always overbet, but she's actually been some nice prices at recent races. She's just not for me because there are so many appealing options in this race. For me, she's just not one of them. But I can understand. She might be moving in the right direction.
Okay, David, one of my last very, very good days. I had an okay day last weekend. You sent me a message.
You had a good day last time we did this. You had quite the late double at Santa Anita.
It was strong. So feeling the momentum starting to build back up. Choisia, I think you picked on top last time. She actually won a grade 1 at Keeneland back in April. That was the Jenny Wiley. She got the inside trip. We've talked about that race a few times because she should have been disqualified that day, and she was not. Oh, they left her up. She probably should have been DQ'd for what she did with the Excellent Truth kind of coming over a little bit. Since then, can absolutely put a line through the Just a Game. Didn't love the turf course that day. Last time, she was able to show speed in that smaller field. I mean, she did finish behind a couple really nice horses. Do you think she's got a better chance in a race like this at Keeneland down on the inside?
She's a horse that I have open here. She wouldn't be my top pick because I think she's she's got that big win at Keeneland. She's getting back to the seat of the crime. I mean, there is a little bit of pattern going on with her that I think can attract some people her way. And if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, this is a race where I want to do some price shopping and find horses that are not going to be, the sexy picks that everybody lands on. I can make that case for Choisia because she was good in the Jenny Wiley. Excellent Truth has panned out to be a really nice horse. And maybe the result should have been reversed, but they would have hit the wire together. And look, she clearly got the wrong trip over a turf course she did not love in the Just a Game. And it's kind of weird. I mean, they brought her to the US where seemingly you could get a horse that loves some firm turf, and she's caught good or yielding courses every single time. And she probably is finally going to get like a hard, firm turf course, because I don't think they've had a lot of rain in Kentucky recently. And this Keeneland course could be pretty hard for the start of the meet. So that could work to her advantage. Drawing inside is absolutely perfect for her because she doesn't really want to lead. I mean, she wants to be covered up and produce that turn of foot, and she's probably going to get the chance to do so under Frankie. So she's definitely a horse that I'll use, but you know what? There are some others that I liked a little bit more, and maybe I should just get to those.
Yeah,
horses,
let's talk about your big prices.
The horse I like the most would be Simply in Front, who she is a horse that I've never been the biggest fan of, but going back to sort of appreciate some of her performances as I handicapped this race, I started to realize she's better than I ever gave her credit for, because I mean, she was just the best when she won that distaff turf mile at Churchill, where she was literally 4 wide around the track and still won. I don't care so much about the just a game. It was a yielding course. She made a big late move from way back to win that Kentucky Downs preview race at Ellis Park. And that's a race that horses have come back to run well out of. I think the runner-up came back to finish second at a grade 2 at Saratoga, and Pharaoh's Wine came back to win a Kentucky Downs. So that's been a productive race. And last time, you know, that ladies turf sprint, I don't know how she finished second in that race, because she got a trip that she should have been able to do absolutely nothing with. We'll show it from the start. She's drawn in post 12 here, and she just gets hung out wide every single step of the way. Coming around the turn here, she is the horse in the red cap with the red and black silks, and she is just 4 wide all around this turn, barely has any cover during the race, yet she continues to make this march forward, improving her position despite the fact that she's losing ground, and she almost gets there at the end. Now, you could say she's one of these horses that just loves Kentucky Downs because she ran a big race at Kentucky Downs in the Music City last year to win, but I kind of think when you take her overall body of work into account, she's just gotten really good as a 4-year-old, and I don't mind the mile for her at all. She's drawn well towards the inside, and I think she could be a fair price in this race because she doesn't go out for connections that are going to take a ton of money or ever really have based on the prices that she's been in her past starts.
And I think this was another Mike Beer horse that he's liked a little bit before in previous races. I think I did one of these last couple of races with Mike, and he talked about this one. And I almost exactly what you said. I had not really been a fan of hers very much, but you were pointing out, I mean, you look at her recent body of work. She actually beat Pinup Betty at Churchill, and Pinup Betty is a Churchill horse for course, right? Like when you beat her on her own turf course like that, you know you're actually in good form. Simply in Front has really sustained that at Ellis Park and then at Kentucky Downs. So I'm not worried about her being a horse for course. You pointed out the Valley View last year's horse was only beaten a length. I think you and I took a look at that race when we previewed it last year. She fits with this group. This group is not like when you compare it to the Jenny Wiley earlier in the year, the one that Schwazia won. That one at that time felt like a really kind of classy group with a lot of courses that were grade 1 types at the moment. It hasn't come back as strong, but this race does not feel as much like a real true group of 1 or grade 1. And that's why you are looking for some prices.
It's a grade 1 wagering race because, I mean, it's the most appealing race to handicap probably on this entire card. But in terms of the quality required to win it, I don't know if horses that win this race are going to go on and be competitive at the Breeders' Cup Mile this year like we've seen in some past editions. I'll move on to another horse that I think is interesting here in Gino. That's the number 7, Heredia, who I know looks a little slow on speed figures, but she's the kind of horse that when you start to pick apart the circumstances around her races, she becomes a little more appealing because she got really good at the end of her 4-year-old season in England. That 3rd place finish in the Sun Chariot behind Inspiral and Marquise de Sauvigny, they are 2 multiple Group 1 winners, and she was not disgraced finishing 3rd to them. She had been impressive in her stakes victories leading up to that, and obviously something went badly wrong for her to be off as long as she was, but Graham Motion gave her plenty of time. Graham Motion is an expert at bringing horses back off lengthy layoffs, and she ran well in the bogey, but you can kind of tell in the final 8th of a mile of that day, it was a race that she probably needed off the long layoff. Then in the De La Rose, that was a race that featured absolutely no pace whatsoever. She closed well into it to just miss. And last time in the Yellow Ribbon, I think some people might downgrade her because she got to control up front through slow fractions and sprint on home, and it was kind of a phony victory. But I don't care about that because she did what she was supposed to do. Her form prior to that was better than it looks, and she probably is going to be underrated in this race because she's got grade Group 1 form, and based on her pattern of her season, she's now supposed to be in the form to produce her best effort, which I think makes her good enough to win this race. So she's a horse. If she's around 15 to 1, I think she could be. I want every bit of her in this race.
She's a pick 4, pick 5 horse. If you play these pick 3s, right, they have the turf pick 3s or the late pick 3s. She's absolutely in the mix for me because as a 6-year-old mare, she feels lightly raced just because we've only seen her a couple times in the last few years. She had that 2.5-year gap in her training, or almost a 2-year gap where she was off from October of 2023 to May of 2025. So she was coming up on almost a 2-year layoff. And if you think dynamic pricing is the horse to beat, she's not far behind dynamic pricing coming off of that long layoff. She should be better now. She should be fitter now. And I actually like the fact that they at least have speed as a weapon to use with this. Some horses don't have that. Some horses, you can't ask them to go on the lead and put them on the lead if you wanted to. I don't think this is a speed horse, but I just like knowing that she's versatile enough or talented enough for them to go, hey, we think you're better than this field. We're just going to put you on the front end. Graham Motion had a really good sense of where his horses fit and stacked up with the horses in the West Coast this year. He sent a few out that won on the West Coast during the Del Mar meet. I think he was like 5 for the last 15 or 16 with horses he sent out West. I agree with you, David. I think this is one of the sneaky price horses in the field, and I will absolutely be using in some multi-exotics. We had a question about Ozara, David, a horse that I never thought was this quality. I just did not think was grade 1 at a mile at all, but she likes Saratoga. She's in really nice form. And when we look around at this field and we're kind of talking about it, like, you know what? This isn't the strongest grade 1 in the world. I still don't know if she can win this race, but she doesn't seem outclassed by a lot of these horses. Like I just still have never been that big of a fan of her. A lot of her wins seem like perfect trips.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to fall off my chair if she wins this race. I'm not going to really do that for anybody in here. She's just a horse I have no interest in betting. Her form is totally exposed at this point. I mean, she is what she is. She's gotten perfect trips the last couple of times. I don't think she's going to do much better than the Boston Spa. I don't know if her Boston Spa effort is going to win this race. And now she's drawn in post 10, where it's going to be tough to get the ground saving trips that she's gotten the last couple of times. So she's just not I'm not going to bet her in this race. But again, I mean, you could make cases for a lot of horses in here and let price be your guide. If Ozara somehow drifts up to 15-1, which is not outside the realm of possibility, then yeah, I could make a case to warm up to her a little bit more. But at 6-1, she's not for me at all.
David, is there anything else you want to hit on in this race?
Yeah, I mean, so if I'll just mention quickly 2 alternative scenarios if people want to throw some bombs in. Gino, there's not much pace in this race for a 12-horse field. There are very few that want to be forward, and I don't think that Schwazia's connections are going to be going to the front end in this race like they did last time when it didn't work. And Rakia, she should be viewed as a threat to potentially go gate to wire or lead them for a long way, because if we were saying dynamic pricing is the horse to beat in this race and the most likely winner. Rakia ran just as well as dynamic pricing last time in that perfect sting, because that was an honest pace. A long shot ran off on the front end. Rakia was the one that had to go after her, and she got swarmed by 2 closers in mid-stretch and then battled back to put away Proctor Street, who actually got in front of her, to come back for second at the end of that race. So she suddenly, out of nowhere, got back to the form that she looked like she had showed at Del Mar last year. And maybe Todd Pletcher has finally figured out a horse that looked a little tricky earlier this year. She bolted in that race too back at Aqueduct. She refused to settle at Gulfstream. So she's had some mental issues, but maybe she got it sorted out last time. So, if pace does not develop, she's a horse that I think could take them a long way up front. If pace does develop, and you think it's going to be a fast pace, throw the number 11 Great Generation somewhere on your tickets, probably, underneath, maybe in a trifecta, because she's not a Group 1 horse overseas, but she's got a pretty wicked turn of foot on her, and she wants firm ground, and she could be closing at the end of this race, especially since it's not the kind of field that is so tough for a grade 1 level. I think she's finding herself in the right kind of spot here. Again, she's not a top pick, but I'm going to be keying on the 4 and the 7, and I'll definitely use her underneath those horses in a try.
One of the more challenging races to handicap, like a fun race to handicap, when you can make cases for 10, 15, 20-1 shots. That's what we're looking for. We're not going to be right a lot of the time with those big prices, but you want to just feel like you can make a strong case for those horses as a gambler. And we were able to do so for a few in here. We can flip the page if you want to, a couple more grade 1s to finish up. We've got the Breeders' Futurity, and I did get a couple questions about a race tomorrow at Santa Anita. I actually have looked at some of these races, so I'll just share real quick with DK. Actually, David, too, I think when you and I handicapped the juvenile fillies turf from Del Mar, Cara Rose was a horse that you liked a little bit, like a big price. Cara Rose is coming back to the dirt, cutting back to 6.5 tomorrow from that mile on the turf. I think could sit a really nice trip. There's a heavy favorite named Liberation in that race who's 4-5 morning line. So if you're trying to beat the favorite, I threw in the 5 horse who could offer you a little bit more value and I think could be fit cutting back and going from turf to dirt. So that was from DK, who was asking us about Santa Anita on Friday. But we've got some grade 1 action at Keeneland on Saturday. And this is always, these 2-year-old races are always exciting because, is there a Kentucky Derby horse in here? Is there a horse that runs in one of the Triple Crown races in this race for next year? And you start with Ted Noffey, who has been really impressive, and he earns that big 98 Beyer speed figure. But I think if you took him out, the rest of the horses in this field are all really interesting, like for different reasons. I think you can make cases for a few of them as lightly raced with upside. I think he just is the most accomplished right now and the horse that you kind of start the conversation with.
Yeah, this is not like the Alcibiades where Tommy Joe was lining up against a bunch of horses that really don't have the credentials to win a race like this. I mean, if you take Ted Noffey out of this race, it would still be an interesting Breeders' Futurity. He's just very much the horse to beat based on what he did last time. And I mean, the visual of the hopeful kind of speaks for itself. I mean, this horse, yes, the pace wasn't that fast and he got a very good trip, all things considered, but it's what he does in the final quarter mile where he quickens away from this field like he's a turf horse. I mean, the way that he just turns over his stride right on through the wire. I mean, you often see these 2-year-olds, the 7 furlong starts to expose some stamina limitations and they can't really run through the wire the same way that they can in the early stages because they just haven't been trained that way just yet. But I mean, the way he was able to switch off early and then turn it on late, it does give you some hope for him getting some added ground here. And it's only a mile and 16th. So he's not supposed to have a whole lot of trouble getting the distance. And if he runs back to this 98 Beyer, he's going to be awfully tough to beat in this field because unlike Tommy Joe in the Spinaway, I do think there was talent behind Ted Noffey and the hopeful, and he beat them easily. So he's going to be tough to get around in this race, but he's also going to be a very short price, Gino, and there are other talented runners lining up against him. I think
the horse that was the first one. Yeah. I think the horse that you were a little bit into, and as I've seen a few others people preview this race, and the more I handicapped this race, the more I started to warm up to was the 1 Blackout Time, a horse who you looking at horses like this, what's wrong with his form overall? Absolutely nothing. It just makes sense. A very good debut, improved in the second start, and just put those horses away, David, at Ellis Park.
Yeah, he won very impressively last time, was really not fully extended to do so. It was a soft trip. It was a soft field. I mean, you see the italicizations that the second and third place finishers came back to win. They did so, but as you can see from the Beyer chart here, I mean, the one regressed by 1 point, the other ran the same figure. So it's not exactly flattering the last race to suggest that, that 83 should have been a 93. And Blackout Time probably will have to run a 90 plus Beyer to beat Ted Noffey. But he's a horse that has been moving forward. Ken McPeak is just in the midst of an awesome season with his 2-year-olds this year. They've been showing up. They've been winning stakes races. So I think Blackout Time is a horse that is going to run well in here, and he'll probably be a fair enough price to take a shot against Ted Noffey with. He's kind of the only horse I could really get to take a shot against the favorite with. But I acknowledge it's not going to be an easy task.
Yeah, that I think for me what was hard is I didn't have the second horse. I think a lot of these horses are evenly matched. Like Blackout Time wouldn't shock me. I thought Big Dom's debut was pretty good. And Litmus Test is the one, David, I guess we could take a look at him. He's one that I'm interested in just solely on distance. I think for him, getting a chance to go longer will really help. And it's so difficult sometimes to get a gauge and to get a read on these Bob Baffert trainees when they're all facing each other. Like we had this problem with Rodriguez last year or earlier in the year this year, right? Where Rodriguez was in some of those races with other Baffert trainees. And there were a couple times where he didn't really get allowed to go to the lead and he was kind of kept wide. And so we didn't really know who he was as a horse until a little bit farther along. I almost wonder with Litmus Test, he was just kind of kept wide in the race last time out. A little flat last time in a race that Brandt got to the lead and cruised. Desert Gate was the horse coming out of this race that'll be favored this weekend, running in the American Pharoah at Santa Anita. You and I did a preview of that race on the website too, if anyone wants some help, an individual preview on the American Pharoah. But yeah, I think he's kind of interesting. just feel like he's going to have to take a pretty sizable step up in this next start, just like you said, to compete with Ted Noffey and probably be somewhere in the 90 Beyer speed figure range. So he wouldn't shock me. I think he'll improve in here. I've just been pretty impressed with Ted. And I told you, David, it might just be like the human in me because I had the interview with Ned Toffee yesterday. So I spent,
the plug to the podcast.
Right. I spent an hour talking with Ned Toffee, the GM of Spendthrift Farms, and that interview will be out on the Off the Track podcast next week. So you hear him talking about how good the horse is and how from early on they like the horse. And usually when there's a creative name like this, they keep them for the horses that they like. Right. Yeah. You're not going to name the horse for the general manager of Spendthrift that you don't think is very good. So you save it for one of the horses that you like a little bit. I do think he's interesting. And I wanted to ask you at least about Ewing a little bit before we turn the page, because he was one of the more impressive early 2-year-old winners that we had up at Saratoga. Crushes. He wins by 12. He earns an 88 Beyer speed figure. He regressed a little bit last time out. Have they changed the speed figure, and did they like move it up a little bit? Because I think it was even lower early. Because I felt like
it might have been. It was in the 70s originally, maybe.
Yeah. So it wasn't that step forward that you were hoping for. And to me, he kind of feels like he's distance limited.
Yeah, I do not envision this horse getting better with added distance. I didn't love that he broke a little slowly last time and had to rush up. And I mean, the horse that looked so good that he was facing off against it at Saratoga Special Obliteration. They've since gone to the turf with him. So I just wonder if some of those early season 2-year-olds didn't quite pan out to be as good as they looked at the time. And I'd be very surprised if Ewing won this race. I know he's a horse that attracted some buzz early on. I just don't think this is the right spot for him.
The Breeders' Futurity will have Ted Noffey as the heavy favorite. Is there anyone in here you want to mention or anything else you want to hit on?
No, I think we can move on to the next one because probably a little more of interest in the Coolmore Turf Mile. I mean, it's not quite as wide open as the First Lady, but it's close.
And it looks like there's a pretty fair amount of speed on paper in this race, David, just from like inside to outside. Donegal Momentum wants to be forwardly placed. Quattro Centro has been doing some of his best running, sitting really close. Even a horse like Howard Wallowitz is stretching out of some sprint races. So by default, he could be a little bit closer. I don't think they want him on the lead. I think they want to sit with him and make one run. Diego Velasquez, he wants to be close. He's not even in the projector because he comes in from some of the European races. And would horses like Mercante want to be forward? Epic Ride is probably the fastest in the field. So it wouldn't be shocking to see, at least 3 or 4 horses kind of putting pressure, or one horse trying to clear the field like Epic Ride going really fast.
Yeah, I mean, I think Epic Ride, he kind of has to go forward. He's run fast paces in his last couple of turf miles, and he's run really well. I mean, he almost held on for the victory in the race at Ellis Park, and then last time he went fast early and just kept going every step of the way. So, I mean, he'll probably go out there and try to wire the field again, and if he's able to do it, I mean, kudos to him. But if not, it could set this race up to come apart a little bit. And that's kind of the way I was thinking about it because, I mean, Donegal Momentum, as you said, and Quattro Centro, they are also horses that need to be ridden forwardly. So I do think this race could open up to some closers. If there's one horse that will be somewhere in that first or second flight that holds on, I think it is most likely to be Diego Velasquez, who probably is the horse to beat in this race. I mean, you don't often see last out Group 1 winners in Europe coming over to contest a non-Breeders' Cup Grade 1 in this country. But that's the case with him winning the Prix Jacques Le Marois last time, and did so over Notable Speech, who could be the favorite come Breeders' Cup time in the mile. So Diego Velasquez, he's got legitimate form. It feels like Aidan O'Brien has finally gotten back to his best. And Aidan's done this before where he's prepped horses at Keeneland and then run them in the Breeders' Cup. And we'll see if it works out for this horse, if that's the ultimate goal. But I do expect him to give a good account of himself in this race.
I agree. He can sit off a little bit too. Like, he doesn't need to be right on the lead.
He's not a speed.
He can track, but he wants to be forward. He doesn't want to come from way out of it. And you were pointing out that race with Notable Speech, where Notable Speech did have some legitimate trouble in that race and came flying up the inside. I think we talked about this when we previewed the race individually on DRF TV. I actually like watching that the gallop out, like Notable Speech did not just go right by him. Diego Velasquez is a fighter. So like if he's in the race early and he's sitting comfortable, he's probably going to fight you till the end. And I think he will be in the mix, but he'll likely get overbet, and he doesn't feel like as fun of a price in a race like this, David, that we think could get chaotic. So if it does go, if they do go really quick early on, who do you think some of the horses that could capitalize and maybe be a fair price?
Yeah, the horse I want in this race, at least that I'm most looking forward to betting, is the number 10, Brilliant Birdie. A horse that, looks a little bit light on speed figures for a grade 1 race, but he is a horse that just really has not gotten the pace that he needs this year, right up until the race at Kentucky Downs, which I'll talk about in just a second. But I mean, from the opening verse where he closed into a slow pace to the Arlington, where he somehow wound up on the lead because there was no pace, the Wise Dam, where they crawled up front and he still was able to run down Loggy Nose, who came back and ran big at Kentucky Downs. So, I mean, I think has run better than the Beyer speed figures might look. And I think he stepped forward from his 3-year-old to 4-year-old season more than is apparent at first glance. Now, you might look at the last race and say, well, they went 44 and 4 to the half. And, he just ran up into a slow pace, into a fast pace. And that 4th place finish is dressed up. But my counter to that would be, look at the chart for that race. I mean, yes, they went 44 and 4 to the half, but the horses that were 1st and 2nd early stayed on for 1st and 3rd at the end. So it's not like it was a race that completely fell apart, because those 2 horses that were forward early were 14 and 18 to 1, and they still held on. And I think that was a theme that we saw at Kentucky Downs, where on certain days, in certain types of races, speed that went out fast just held, and others had trouble closing, especially closing wide. And Brilliant Birdie, that was the case for him. I mean, he was trying to make up ground on the outside and really was the only horse that was making a significant run from as far back as he did. And you can see that in the chart here. So I think even last time he ran better than it looks. And in this race, he's supposed to get the pace he needs. And I'm hoping that it's finally time for him to run one of those triple-digit Beyers. And it should be a decent enough price finding out.
Brilliant Birdie feels like a horse who gets a trip and could offer you more value than an obvious horse like program trading, right? I think that's where a lot of people will kind of start. Probably
makes a lot of sense.
Trading. He just looks good. 2nd start back off the long layoff, multiple grade 1 winner. He just doesn't have many bad races throughout his entire career. Should get the setup. He lost to Donegal Momentum, but Donegal Momentum had an easier trip that day. And we are thinking that this race won't set up that way for Donegal Momentum. So completely understand why, for like Sean, a lot of people will probably start there with program trading. He looks really good. Sean also agrees on the 10. I was mentioning a horse, David, when we did the preview that I'm kind of curious about, and that's the 12, Jonquil. So I really don't know how good this horse is and how good the company he's been keeping is, but I think he could get an interesting trip. I think he's sort of lightly raced, and I don't think he's going to get bet like the other European horses do. So from the outside, if he's able to just drop back a little bit, kind of sit mid-pack or towards the back, make one late run. He was a little closer up early last time out in the race, and then he backed off a bit and tipped out and closed well to just get up. So I like the races going a mile. I'm kind of intrigued. I'm looking for some big prices in here. He's kind of a new face who I think will be really under the radar. I'm going to use him in some of the exotics as well, because I'm just expecting a big price there from Jonquil on the outside.
I'm never going to talk you off a horse like that, Gino. I couldn't quite get there with him. I just couldn't quite warm up to even his good races over there enough. But I mean, from the post he's leaving from, and the fact that, they're not getting one of the quote unquote elite US riders, I mean, he probably is going to be a very fair price in this race. And I mean, it's not like there's that big of a margin in terms of the time form ratings or Beyers between the top contenders and those that are going to be 15 to 20 to 1 in this race. So he's a horse that I could understand making a case for.
David, I know you and I both like, as a horse, Rhetorical, and think that he's a really talented New York bred who has won 4 of his 5. His only loss came when he had to come from way out of it, and he was still only beaten 3/4 of a length that day. Sean's asking about him because it is a big step, but he's the type of horse who's been so impressive in his wins, and he's been doing it so easily. Most of his races, he hasn't really been tested.
Yeah, I mean, he's won these races very easily. And when you're winning on the turf by open lengths consistently, you are utterly dominant over your competition. And he's been. And every time they've stepped him up in class, he's proven good enough. Now, this is a really big step up in class. I mean, it's a much tougher spot than he's ever encountered before. But, I mean, he ran a Beyer last time that puts him in the mix. And the only problem with him, Gino, is that his wins have been so visually impressive that I think it's going to become an assumption that he'll be able to rise to the level of competition here. And it's such a rise in class that I don't necessarily want to take a price under 10 to 1 on him. And I do think he's going to be under 10 to 1 in this race. Yeah. So he's not a horse I really want to bet, but I'll be interested to see what he does.
again, really competitive. The grass races, the 8th and the 10th. I mean, you could spend a couple hours like handicapping and talking about them and going through each of these horses individually and making cases for a lot of them. And we're making cases against some of the shorter price horses, but those are races that you want as a gambler to be able to find horses that are short prices that maybe you can poke some holes in, and some big ones you can make cases for.
Yeah, and I'll just say this is the kind of day where, I mean, I'll look at the multi-race sequences, but putting together a pick 5 just seems really daunting, especially trying to get through the First Lady and the Coolmore Turf Mile. And if I'm a little bit against Ted Noffey, then this ticket just gets even more expensive. So, I mean, these are the kinds of races where I want to get involved in exactas, trifectas, or some win bets, especially in that First Lady and even a little bit in this Coolmore Turf Mile. So I'm looking more on a race-by-race basis than putting together some bloated pick 5 ticket, because as you could tell, I want to use multiple horses in a lot of these races and do some price shopping and look at the board, because you're going to find some overlays along the way.
Yeah, don't forget, and some of those higher level wagers now too that they have with the doubles and the $3 pick 3s and the turf pick 3s, you can really shorten up, especially if you're someone who plays the way that David and I play, where you're looking for a lot of horses that are in the 10 to 1-ish range, right? If you're that type of player who you don't bet as much on the shorter prices, but you bet on the bigger prices and you're looking, it's so hard to connect 5 of those in a row. I sent you a message today. I was alive in the coast to coast pick 5. I had a good opinion. I was alive single to a horse that I liked. That was like 5 to 1. The horse didn't get out of the gate, right? Because one of the races, something like that's going to happen. You're going to get like, it's just so hard to have good luck and everything go your way 4 or 5 times in a row. 2 or 3 times in a row, much better of a chance if you're trying to find a good double or even an individual race play. Like I think that was for me, David, when I became and felt like I kind of leveled up my gambling, was when I just stopped feeling the pressure to get involved in all of the, like the pick 5 wager this weekend or the all graded stakes pick 5. I was able to really bet horses to win, bet a little bit more individually on my opinion than feeling like I always had to take the big swing and like you were missing out if you didn't, get involved in that big pool.
Yeah, there's a whole wagering menu from which to choose. And now that they've added some of these new higher minimum wagers, there are even more wagers to choose from if you want to connect different horses in various races or play some of these multi-race sequences. You don't always have to go for the ones that are going to pay big balloons, because it can be very tempting, but sometimes your opinions just don't line up in a way that it makes sense to play them. And as Gino said, sometimes you just have a bunch of opinions that might be clever race by race, but to string all of them together and have the luck to be right by about 5 alternative picks in a row, I mean, it rarely happens that way. So you don't want to play your pick 5 needing that to happen, because your hit rate is going to be very low. And some people have the stomach to play that way all the time, but you don't want to keep playing bloated tickets, hoping that happens while covering a bunch of other options at the same time. And if you can, diversify your bankroll to play more win bets, taking money off the table when you like a long shot, that's going to help you in the long run.
Sean agrees with you, David. And we really appreciate everybody out there checking in from the very beginning. We had Mark and then some of our buddies like Chase. If you're ever looking for another good podcast, Chase and Barry do a great job on the Notorious OTB. Eric can help you out with some football and sports wagering stuff. And Sean was a great kind of co-host for us tonight. Sean, you were asking some good questions all throughout, and we're giving us some good points to kind of counter and to feed off of. So love interacting with all of you out there. David, I've had a lot of fun over the last month doing some of these shows with you, because like always, you might lead me to a horse that wasn't on my radar. Some of the viewers out there will bring up a horse that we kind of take a second look at. And anytime I can sit down and talk more racing with other sharp handicappers and gamblers, it just makes you, I think, a little bit better moving forward.
100%. I mean, I love to do it with people whose opinions I respect, like you, Gino, and it's what everyone who's watching us and people who play this game, they like to share opinions, and it only makes your opinion stronger when you go to place your wagers this weekend.
So thanks again for hanging out with us here. Remember, we have a lot of content that's free for you on the Daily Racing Forum YouTube. So check that all out. Make sure to go subscribe, drop some comments in the comments section. Let us know some of the races that you like and have opinions on. And a big shout out to producers Lucia and Bobby for hanging out with us again here on Thursday night. Have a great weekend, everyone. Good luck.